Thank you for joining me, everyone. Charles Moskowitz here. I smell a rat. I smell a rat regarding this lockdown that we're all experiencing in this country and in other parts of the world. This is a virus that has so far led to the deaths of a lot less people than other viruses every year. Apparently, the regular ordinary flu, on average, leads to 100,000 deaths. Now, I'm not saying it's good that people are dying. I think that, however, the information about this is being suppressed, and that is that it affects people who are in poor health or who are elderly, who are 70 years and older. And that the focus, I would think, and I'm not a doctor here, but should be to protect those people from exposure to a virus, like we would protect them from exposure to any virus. Nursing homes should be checking people's temperatures and testing people before they enter the premises. People who have pre-existing conditions should get permission from their doctors to isolate and to not have people come in during the period of contagion. But it seems to me that the rest of us healthy people should be conducting our business as normal and back to work, which is what they're doing in Sweden, which is what, and also I'm suspicious over the fact that drugs that do work, like hydroxychloroquine, which has been around and is FDA approved going back to the 1950s, is being discredited. Now, I understand that there's a concern that there could be a rush on it and that people who already are taking it for various reasons might experience a shortage, and that's a problem. I agree with that. But it seems to me that we should be calling for an increase in production of it. It's inexpensive. It's a cheap drug. Turkey apparently is using it across the board for anyone who has symptoms of the COVID-19 virus. And their society is functioning with some restrictions for people who have pre-existing conditions. And yet in this country, we're told that all people, all healthy people, have to be locked down. In Massachusetts, my home state, the governor just announced that all people will have to wear masks when they go outside their house, or else they'll face a $300 fine, which means ultimately that you could go to prison if you don't wear a mask. This is tyranny. This is a complete loss of our constitutionally recognized freedoms. And I'm very suspicious about it. I smell a rat here. I think this is a war against our constitutional rights. It's a war against our economy. It's creating unemployment like the Depression era, putting people out of work, forcing people to stay in their homes. And then, of course, we're fed this nightly digest of fear-mongering propaganda from the mainstream media, and to convince us that there's a terror going on. Now, I know that I don't want to catch this disease. I mean, I've been told that I'm in a pre-existing condition category on 2 counts because I'm over 60 and because I'm overweight. But yet, I think that if we get healthier and we take reasonable precautions, in my case, I take supplements. I take a stem enhanced product, which is a natural stem enhanced product, which I think is very good. Cerule, which makes the product. By the way, it's available on my website. I'm not trying to hype here, but that's what I do. I'm not recommending it for others. Then we can be protected. I mean, apparently it's seeping out that something like upwards of 20% of the whole population has the virus and with no effect. We all have viruses in us. We have viruses from childhood. The body, develops immunity to it naturally. And the fact that we're all locked inside is going to weaken our immune systems. We're going to get sicker. And I'm concerned that we're not going to get back to status quo ante after the virus passes, if the media ever admits and the establishment ever admits that it did pass. Which brings me to my speculation here, why I think that I smell a rat. There is always these trumped up crisis that makes people surrender their freedom, that makes people surrender their property in the form of governments borrowing from central bankers, which then put a lien on our dollar, the working man's dollar. In this country, the pivotal year was 1912. It was the year that a socialist was elected president, Woodrow Wilson, in a three-way race, which was deliberate so that he could sneak in. That was followed by the passage of the 16th Amendment, which was direct taxation, and which also not only would take income directly from people by the federal government, that didn't exist before, but also set up these nonprofits and foundations by which the oligarchs could park their wealth and then use the money not only to put their various friends on payrolls, but also to influence society, to influence how we see things and how we think through investment. And it also is the year of the establishment of the Federal Reserve. America's ability, our government's ability to create currency, interest-free, that would reflect the value of the economy was handed over to this private consortium of bankers who could then inflate it anytime they wanted and who could depress it anytime they wanted by regulating its value, and who could thus profit from that and centralize power in the hands of unelected officials. It was shortly after that that the United States was dragged into World War I unnecessarily. And then, of course, World War I led to World War II. America had no direct interest in any of it. The Depression, Milton Friedman acknowledged years later in the 1980s that it was caused by primarily the Federal Reserve. Then after World War II, we had the Cold War to keep us in a perpetual state of war all around the world, fighting communism. We could have fought communism very easily in this country by exposing it instead of discrediting those who were trying to do just that, and by contrasting our free system with the evils of that international collectivist cabal, which is entirely a part of this establishment that I'm making reference to here. When that faded away, we then had 9/11, international Islamic terrorism, striking all around the globe. A real problem, but one that could have been dealt with without surrendering our freedoms, some of which were salted into the USA Patriot Act. We could have done it without going to war in Iraq, which destabilized the entire Middle East. Now that that's wound down, we have this. The enemy is now a germ that secretly pervades the entire society and that stalks us every time we step outside our doors. So we have to bundle up with these masks, and we're going to be penalized if we don't. That we're afraid to touch anything because we might catch it. It's like some kind of a nightmare out of a science fiction movie. Now, I understand again that there is a virus, and I understand from these two doctors who were censored from YouTube that the way to treat the virus is to protect the vulnerable and isolate them and let everybody else, let it pass through. But we are where we are right now, and I'm concerned that it may never end. We'll always have it around, whether it be this virus or a new virus. If you listen to Fauci, they want to have everyone get a tattoo to prove they don't have it. Is this a chance to put chips into people? I don't think that's far-fetched at all. 3 months ago, it would have been unthinkable for Americans to think that we'd be told to stay indoors. This has never happened before, and yet here we are. So we ought to be very concerned, and I am, and I do smell a rat. Anyway, Charles Moskowitz here. Thanks for joining me today.